Welcome to our September workshop here for Up Level Wellness. Today, we have entitled this workshop A Healthy Identity Reset, and we are going to start where you are, and we're going to give you some steps to help you become who you want to be. So just to start with, are you in the right place? Have a few questions for us. Have you ever felt like summer completely threw you off track and now you're just struggling to get back into a routine? I know that was definitely something for me this year. I felt like summer was quite chaotic. Have you ever started strong with a health goal only to lose steam when things happen, life happened, it got chaotic, and it was difficult to stick with it? Have you ever known what you should be doing but couldn't stay consistent long enough to make it stick? It was definitely a routine that I fell into myself. Have you ever told yourself, I'll start on Monday again, but never really gained any momentum in the progress of where you wanted? I'm guessing that something in that probably rang true for you because these are very common things that we hear a lot when we talk with clients, and we've all been there. We've all lived this, and that's the best thing about our team is that we're all here because we all have a personal journey that is very much a growth journey and related to our own personal health. And so we know these things because we've been there and we've lived them. And today I wanted to share a story of one of our coaches within our Up Level Wellness team. So this is Christine. And this is a photo from a few years ago with her two beautiful daughters. Christine is a working mom of two. She is kind of infamous for saying yes to everything, which means that she was struggling to find a way to create some rhythm of taking care of herself among all the other things that were going on. The first time I talked with Christine, I remember she told me that she would track everything she ate all day when she was at work, and then she would get home and it was time to make dinner for the family, and she didn't really know what to make, and the girls were hungry and they were picky eaters, and she just didn't even know what to do. So then she would end up reaching for whatever was most convenient, which then would end up being things that she didn't really want to feed her kids, let alone eat herself. So the wheels would just kind of fall off in the evening, and then she would say, oh, whatever, I just ate that, so we'll start again tomorrow. She finally reached out to me and said, I need some help. And she said, I just don't know where to start, and I could use some support in being able to make some progress. So this is Christine now a couple of years later. And the reason that I wanted to share this in relation to the time of year that we are now and what we're talking about with Christine is that I'll never forget that last summer she told me, about this time, she said, I just did summer differently this year. So through her journey, she released 30 pounds. But what was more important was that she just gained a new identity. She gained a new sense of herself. She gained confidence in being able to, figure out what her desired habits were and then stick with them. And part of that was being able to have a coach and have the community and support around her. But now she says all the time that she feels empowered in her health, but also just really more in alignment with her family and where she wants to be and what she wants to do with her life. She's much more confident as a role model with her daughters, which has helped her to improve their eating habits along the way and help them with better habits. And she's getting better at setting boundaries for others, which we all know that person. Maybe we are that person who says yes to everybody, but sometimes we just have to say, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to work. And again, I bring her up this time of year because she told me that she just really felt like she did summer better. And if any of us have small kids at home or even just life, summer can get really chaotic. And so if she felt like she was, handled that better, the stress of it and managed it all, then that's definitely a win. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about where we are currently with our current identity. We're going to recognize some habits and thoughts that are keeping us stuck. We're going to take a look at what is our desired identity, who do we want to be, and we're going to look at how we can align ourselves with that version of ourselves and take actions to become the healthiest version of ourselves. And we're going to create some plans for taking actions that become in alignment with that person that you want to be. Hopefully you received a workbook and an email prior to this workshop. If you did not, we will make sure that you get that as a follow-up with the recording. But this is that worksheet is going to give you some things to fill in to help you work through these steps that we're going to discuss today. So this quote is from my dear friend Lena, and I was in a coaching program with her where she talks a lot about this idea of our identity and our desired future identity. And the example that she gave was in relation to weight loss. And that just resonated with me so much because that is a big part of my own personal journey. But then obviously it's also part of my clients. And so I now use this example with a lot of people because it really helps us understand what we're talking about here in terms of our own desired identities. So the example that she gives is, a person can lose weight, but they can't keep it off if they remain in the same identity as the person who gained it. So they're not going to continue to keep the weight off if they are the same person who was eating her emotions and, drinking her stress with alcohol or sugar. They're not going to be able to keep that off. So I think that just really helps us understand why a lot of times people will maybe lose weight, but then they have a hard time sustaining the lifestyle or the habits that help them lose the weight. And so then they just gain it all right back. If they don't shift their identity to be somebody who just responds the way that the desired identity is, it's going to be harder for them to keep that weight off because they're feeling more comfortable in the version who gained the weight. So why is our identity so important? And I'm going to share a bunch of quotes today from the book Atomic Habits. This is a really, really influential book for me, and it's just a really great book that gives us some practical information about ways to create behavior change. So right at the beginning of this book, he talks a lot about our identity, and he says true behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with it is it's because it becomes part of your identity. So anybody can convince themselves to visit the gym or eat healthy once or twice, but if you don't shift your belief that you are the type of person who continues to do that, you're not going to stick with it. We've all, been seeing all the memes and experienced the influx of people at the gym in January, but then come the 1st of February, everybody's gone because they just didn't have the motivation to stick with it because they were somebody that was going to change everything, but they didn't really shift who they really were as a person. So just a little interaction here. And if you'd like to chime in, I'd love to hear, what are some thoughts and habits that someone has that maybe struggles with their health? I have a few ideas for us. Maybe they turn to food when they're emotionally triggered. Maybe they sacrifice sleep for comforts like TV or social media. We've all been there, that we just, find ourselves scrolling and scrolling instead of getting up and going to bed. We should on ourselves. I know this is something we all kind of talk about, especially as women. I feel like this is something that we fall into of, well, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And then that creates a lot of internal dialogue and guilt. They diet in the dark without a support system. And I think a lot of times when people do that, it's because they feel like, well, it's just one more thing that I'm most likely going to fail at. So I'm just not going to tell anybody. So then when it fails, it doesn't matter. They have a very much an all or nothing mentality. We've all been there, me included, of, okay, well, I ate that thing, so I might as well just eat this thing also, or I might as well just go ahead and have the ice cream and the cookie and the other thing because I already blew it for today, so I might as well just keep going down that rabbit hole. They cave into societal and peer pressure. We're going to talk a little bit more about society and how this works, but unfortunately, we do not live in a society that prioritizes healthy habits. Unfortunately, the norm around us are things that are a lot of things that are pretty unhealthy. And so it's really easy to just go with the flow when it comes to whether it's what you're ordering at a restaurant or, drinking alcohol or eating ice cream or whatever it is. It's really easy to crave to societal peer pressure because unfortunately the norm is not necessarily the healthiest options for us. So what James Clear, an Atomic Habit, says about this is, if you do not actively choose a better way, then society, culture, and general inertia of life will push you into a worse way. The default is distraction, not improvement. And this was very much something that I found myself awoken to one day when I realized, man, I'm just living. I am just going with whatever is happening to me, with wherever I am with my work. And I am not living with intention at all. And I remember a conversation with my husband one day when it was a particularly chaotic morning with our small children. And he said, we just have to survive this part of our life. This is going to be the hardest part. And I said, no, I will not do that. We are not going to, take these formative years with our kids and just survive them, because that's not the type of family that I want to be. And that was definitely a big moment for us as a family when we said, nope, we're not going to just go with the general inertia. We have to make some changes. So what are some thoughts and habits that a healthy person does have? They consider food as fuel, not comfort. Now, I'm not going to say that you're never going to have a treat here and there and enjoy that, but as a whole, the goal is to consider the food that you're really using to fuel your body, not just something that you're turning to for comfort. They prioritize sleep and they have a good nighttime routine. They understand how unhealthy food makes them feel physically. They prioritize movement in a way that fits it within their life and builds as it gets easier. This was definitely my experience. Exercise has never been a favorite thing of mine, and I felt like it was something that just really took up so much time in my day. And so once I decided that I really wanted to prioritize exercise, I literally started with a goal of walking 15 minutes at a time for 3 days a week. And as that got easier, I added a little bit more and I added a little bit more. And now it becomes something that just is part of my day and part of my routine. And I know that when I don't do it, I definitely can feel it in my energy and just in my body. And it's become something that is, a non-negotiable part of my week, even though it's still very difficult sometimes for me to put that in. They find a support system who is aligned with their goals. That is a huge thing. And I think that's something that was very influential for me as part of my journey. It's something that we really prioritize as part of our team within Up Level Wellness, is we want to help create community for people. We have that one-on-one coaching relationship, but then we also want to find ways to have other people interact with each other, because it is important to find a support system that aligns with your goals, especially if your immediate support system around you maybe doesn't necessarily have that. It's really important to find people who are prioritizing the same things you are. And one thing we like to talk about is quick down, quick up. We are all going to stumble. We are all going to make choices that maybe don't align with our goals 100% of the time, but we don't let that derail us. So something happens, you eat something that you don't want to, you skip a workout, you stay up too late, you just get right back at it. You don't let that take you down a rabbit hole of a bunch of other bad decisions. You just decide, all right, that happened. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but now we're going to move on to the next thing and get right back at it. They recognize they can make healthy choices and still have friends. And this is kind of funny and we can laugh about it, but this was a big one for me personally. When I first lost my weight, because I lost about 45 pounds over the summer of 2020. And what was crazy about that was, because of the timing, people literally hadn't seen me for 6 months. And then they saw me and they're like, wait a second, what just happened? And for a while, it was a challenge for me, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to drink as much, or I'm not going to eat those things, or I'm going to have a salad. And now all of a sudden I'm doing things different than they are. But what I realized was those things were in my head. And if somebody was watching what I was doing, it was most likely more about the fact that they were feeling guilt over what choices they were making. It was not because they were judging me. And in the end, I finally decided, you know what? Who cares if I'm bringing my own salad to this thing, because I know that maybe the foods that are there aren't going to be the best things to fuel my body. It doesn't matter. And if somebody does have a problem with that, it's really more on them than it is on me. And at the end of the day, most people are very supportive, because chances are they would like to make some changes themselves, and they just don't have they haven't gotten there yet. And so you could be an inspiration to somebody else by demonstrating that you're able to make those healthy choices and still be able to interact socially. Okay, so great. We know what these habits are, but why is it so hard to change? In Atomic Habits, he says, we don't choose our earliest habits, we imitate them. We follow the script handed down by our friends and family, our church, our school, our community, and society at large. Each of those cultures and groups come from its own set of expectations and standards. When or whether to get married, how many children, how to celebrate holidays, etc., etc. In many ways, these social norms are the invisible rules that guide your behavior every day. And a great example of this is I was on a call one time with my mentor coach, and the client that we were talking with shared that her family had a pretty long history of obesity. And she really wanted to break that chain, but she knew that what she had been modeled was not healthy and not successful. And she said something to the effect of, my family has a long history of obesity. And what my coach said was, actually, that's not true. What your family has is a history of poor choices that have led to obesity. And I thought, oh my, like that's a pretty big shift in our mindset there, because it changes how we're thinking about taking ownership of our choices, because really, it is about the fact that our choices are leading to this problem. It's, maybe there's some genetic components involved. I'm not a doctor, but by and large, chances are, if this is something that's been in your family, you've been modeled some habits that maybe aren't the healthiest. And so therefore you just picked up on those habits and continue them yourself. Okay, great. So you're here because you likely want to make some changes in your life and you want to become somebody who prioritizes health. So we know that this is really difficult and that these things may or may not really be our own fault. And we know that this is not the easiest thing to stick with, because chances are we've probably tried many times. But how are we going to do something different? How are we going to draw a line in the sand today and say, from this day on, I'm going to reinvent myself and I'm going to become someone who prioritizes my own health and well-being? Well, we're going to start with being honest about where we are now. And this is in your worksheet. So again, if you don't have the worksheet, we'll make sure we get it to you with the recording and the follow-up of this. But this is a fun little exercise that Lena also taught me, where we're going to name our current identity. And if you want to, it would be fun to solicit some input from other people. And then also just make a list of your own, of what are your own thoughts? Like, who are you currently? What are your struggles? What are the things that excite you? And just kind of write all this down, collect some input from other people, and then put it into ChatGPT and ask it to name your current identity. I did this as an example with things that I hear from potential clients all the time. And so I'm going to read this and let me know if you think this is something that you can relate to. Overwhelmed Olivia. Olivia is a strong, caring woman who gives her all to her family and work, but when it comes to her own health, she feels stuck. She knows she should make better choices, but between busy days and exhaustion, she struggles to follow through. She starts new habits with the best intentions, but when she slips up or doesn't see results fast enough, she quits. The cycle of yo-yo dieting has left her frustrated and drained. Deep down, she wants lasting change, but she doesn't know where to start or how to make it stick. Can anybody relate to any of those things? Chances are there's maybe something in there at least that you can say, yep, that's me and I've been there before. Okay, so we've identified where we are, but now we're going to paint a picture of who it is that we would love to be. And again, it's going to be a brain dump. So I like to do this typing because I can type faster than I can write, and then I can just copy and paste that into ChatGPT. But what does the healthy version of you do each day? How does she respond to stress? What does she do when she gets home from work and she's exhausted? How does she prioritize movement? What does she order when she's out with friends? Like, get really detailed, and as detailed as possible, so that you can say, this is the person who I want to be, and put that into ChatGPT and ask it to name your new identity based on your desires. So now our example is, we want to become empowered Olivia. Empowered Olivia is a woman who takes control of her health with confidence and ease. She fuels her body with nourishing foods, not just for herself, but to set a positive example for her family. She moves daily because she wants to, knowing it gives her energy to be fully present for her loved ones. She feels comfortable and strong in her body, no second guessing herself when getting dressed or stepping into a room. When faced with temptations or peer pressure, she stands firm in her choices, knowing she's building a lifestyle that aligns with her goals. At work and at home, she radiates confidence, balance, and strength, showing up as the best version of herself. So that just has a different feeling about her. And we know that, she may not feel this way every day, but if we can anchor ourselves in who is it that I want to become, then we can start to make choices based on who it is I want to be, not the person that I feel like I am right now. But once we do that, we also have to step back and say, well, why is it that I want to create change? Because if you do not have a strong enough intrinsic motivation, a factor that is driving you internally, then you're not going to be able to hold strong when the things get tough, and they're going to get tough. So we have to be prepared for what's coming. Because something is going to happen that's going to send you off track, and you're going to have to be able to bounce back, or you're going to have to be able to say, nope, that's not the decision I'm making today. So one of the tools that they have taught us is to say, why is that important? But then ask yourself again, but why does that really matter? And get 7 layers deep into why does that really matter, so that you get to the real heart of why you want to create change. So for example, you may say, oh, I have to lose some weight because my jeans just don't fit anymore. Okay, well, why does that really matter? Well, because this is the biggest size I've ever had and I don't want to buy anything bigger. Okay, well, why does that really matter? Well, because I'm not confident in my own skin and I don't love, the way that I feel every day. Well, why does that really matter? Well, because I don't love the fact that I'm very self-conscious and I feel like that's not modeling great behaviors or self-esteem for my children. Okay, well, why does that really matter? Because I have 2 daughters who are already experiencing, the body shaming culture of our country, and I want them to be able to be more confident. And so I want to set this a better example for them. You get the idea. Whatever is true for you, start with what's your first answer of why this is important, and keep asking yourself why that really matters until you get to something that is strong enough that's going to help you resist your hardest temptation day, because they're going to come, and we have to have that intrinsic motivation to keep going. And then write it down and share it with somebody else, because chances are you're going to need somebody to help hold you accountable to your goals. We would love to be that somebody for you. If it's somebody else that you have a trusted friend, share it with them. But you need accountability buddy, and you are significantly more likely to stick with your goals if you're sharing it with someone else than if you're going at it alone. And remember, this will not happen. Change will not happen overnight. You have to become the type of person who has the habits that you want to have, and acts the way that you want to act before they will become second nature. So what James Clear says is the bad workouts are the most important ones. It's easy to train when you feel good, but it's crucial to show up when you don't feel like it, even if you do less than you hope. Going to the gym for 15 minutes might not improve your performance, but it reaffirms your identity as somebody that goes to the gym. It's not always what happens during the workout. It's about becoming the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. So again, this is just an example, but the idea is, become the type of person who these things are second nature for, and then eventually they will be. And where do we start? We're going to start small. We're not going to overwhelm the system. We're going to start by picking 1 or 2 things. We're not going to wait until it's all perfect, because it's never going to be. We're not going to wait until Monday, because Monday is not a magical day that is any different than Saturday or Tuesday or any other day. And you're going to find an accountability or someone to talk with who understands where you are, because you really are significantly more likely to create change in your life if you go do it alongside somebody else. So decide the person that you want to be, and then you're going to prove it to yourself that you can become that person with small wins every single day that stack on top of each other, and eventually become just a little easier and a little easier every single day over time. So here's your next steps. Remember, you don't need to start over. We are starting where we are today. The past doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've made progress and then felt like you backtrack. It doesn't matter if you are in a different spot than you hope to be. We're going to start where we are. We are going to define the version of ourselves who we want to be. Know that that person is already inside of you. We just need to find her or him. We need to name him or her, and then we need to align our actions with that person. And don't forget that it's small, consistent steps that are going to help you to build the confidence, energy, and clarity that you've been craving to know in your soul that you can be that person. That person is there. We just have to pull them out, and we would love to support you along the way, whatever your goals are, to continue to identify and become that person. If you're interested in connecting with us further, you can scan this code here, and this will give you a link to a quick survey. You can fill out that survey, and then we would love to get in touch with you to schedule a one-on-one conversation. But even if you're not ready to do that, we're so glad that you're here. We will be now, you're on our email list, and so we will now be sharing updates with you, motivational messages each Sunday, along with what's happening at Up Level Wellness. We'd love to connect with you. We would love to hear more about any of things that resonated with you today or what it is that you're working on prioritizing. But no matter what, we're glad you're here. This is where you're supposed to be. We are in a place to support you because we've all been in a journey ourselves, and we're so glad to have you here with us. So that's all we had today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.